My girlfriend changed our dinner plans for her male best friend and said, "If you're insecure, that's your problem." I paid 70% of our bills for 3 years, so I quietly left her a rent check, took only what was mine, and saved every receipt. 2 weeks later, she called me a thief in front of everyone, until I handed them my phone with the rent check, the move-out notice, and every receipt proving she lied. I'm 32. I work a salary job in project coordination, nothing glamorous, but stable, and I'm good at it. I keep records. I pay bills on time. If there's a shared expense or a joint responsibility, I track it. That's just how I operate. Maya and I had been together for 3 years. She worked part-time, which was fine. I held the primary lease on the apartment, covered around 70% of the rent and utilities, and handled most of the shared finances. She covered her personal expenses and her portion of groceries. The split wasn't equal, but it worked, and I never made it a point of tension. I wanted us to work. I was willing to carry more while she figured things out. For most of our first year, things were genuinely good. Maya was funny in a way that snuck up on you quick, dry, the kind of humor that made you feel like you were in on something. She was easy to be around, easy to trust. I remember a road trip we took that spring. Nothing planned, just driving until we found somewhere to eat. We ended up at a diner 3 hours from home, and she had the waitress laughing inside of 5 minutes. That was who she was. I didn't fall for someone difficult. I fell for someone who was, for a while, exactly who I needed her to be. Tyler had been in her life since before we met. Her best friend, she said. And in year 1, I didn't think much about it. He'd come up in conversation, show up occasionally, and I moved on. I wasn't a jealous person. I didn't need to approve her friends or monitor her social life. What started bothering me was simpler than that. Tyler came over multiple times a week, late evenings, mostly. He and Maya would make plans that ran into ours, and those plans almost always won. I'd mention it, gently, and Maya would hear, "I don't trust you," when I said I'd like to be included. We'd land in the same conversation, I'd get the same answer, and eventually I stopped bringing it up. I thought that was me being mature about it. I don't think she read it that way. She read it as me accepting that she'd won. One other thing worth mentioning, I handled all our shared bills through one email account. Purchase confirmations, subscriptions, receipts, all forwarded and kept in one place. I started doing it because it was easier than disputing charges or losing warranty records. I wasn't doing it for any other reason at the time. It just turned out to matter later. That Tuesday started normal. We'd made the reservation 2 weeks earlier for a place Maya had been wanting to try. 7 p.m., 45-minute drive. I left work early to be home in time. At 6:47, Tyler texted her. I didn't see the message. I saw her phone light up on the counter, saw the name, and noticed her expression shift. Not dramatic, just the kind of small adjustment that happens when someone's attention moves somewhere else. She told me the reservation had been pushed back to 8:30. I asked why. She said they'd found a better time slot. Then I saw the thread still open on her screen. Tyler was coming over. I didn't accuse her of anything. I said, "I would have liked you to check with me before we changed plans we made together." She turned to look at me. "I don't need your permission to make plans with my friend." That's not what I said. If my guy friends make you insecure, that's your problem, not mine. I'm not going to apologize for my friendships. I said, "You're right," and I walked to the other room. She probably expected me to come back out in 10 minutes, quieter. That was the pattern. She'd shut the conversation down, I'd cool off, and we'd move on without resolving anything. This time, I lay in the dark for a long time. I wasn't angry, exactly. It was more like something had finally settled. I'd spent 3 years handing her concern after concern, and she'd given me the same door every time. At some point, the door stops being about her friendships. It starts being about what I'm willing to keep walking into. I didn't sleep well. The next morning, I tried one more time. Calm. Specific. I said, "I'm not asking you to drop Tyler. I'm asking you to check with me when we have plans together." That's it. She was already reaching for her bag. "Why are you still being weird about this?" I thought we moved past it. And she left. After she left, I sat with my coffee and thought about the last 3 years. It wasn't Tyler. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't threatened by Tyler. What I was dealing with was a specific response Maya had for any concern I raised that touched her social life. It didn't matter how I phrased it, how calm I kept my voice, how small I made the request. If my concern landed near her friendships with other men, I got the same answer. You're insecure. Not, I hear you. Let me think about that. Not, I understand why that's frustrating. Just the label, flat and final. Conversation closed. There was the anniversary dinner. We'd booked a table for two, and Tyler showed up last minute because Maya had mentioned the name of the place to him offhand. I said I'd have appreciated it being just the two of us. She said the fact that I was bothered by it was embarrassing. There was the gaming headset. Tyler borrowed it one afternoon without asking. When I mentioned it not angrily, just noted it, Maya told me I was being possessive over things. And there was the one night a week suggestion. I'd read somewhere that couples who carve out intentional time together tend to feel more connected. I brought it up as a question. Maya said I was trying to control her social life. 3 different concerns. 3 years. Same answer every time. What bothered me that morning wasn't just that she'd left without engaging. It was that second line. I thought we moved past it. That's not someone who forgot we had an argument. That's someone who decided unilaterally that the argument was over and expected me to have caught up. She wasn't trying to resolve things. She was waiting for me to accept her version of events. And for 3 years, because I loved her and wanted things to work, I kept going quiet. I kept accepting the closed door. I kept telling myself that letting things settle was different from giving up. It wasn't. She'd mistaken my patience for agreement. And once I saw that clearly, I couldn't unsee it. I thought about every conversation I'd walked away from, every concern I'd softened before raising, every time I'd read her mood before deciding whether to bring something up. I'd spent 3 years editing myself into someone easier to dismiss. Here's the thing about realizing that. It doesn't arrive like a door slamming. It arrives like a quiet click. Something small that locks into place and doesn't move again. I finished my coffee. Rinsed the cup. Opened my email. Not for any particular reason yet. Old habit. I just had a feeling I should know what I had. Maya texted me that afternoon. Glad you're feeling better. I stared at that for a while. She thought I'd cooled off. She thought my silence meant I'd processed it, accepted it, and returned to baseline. She'd read 3 years of me going quiet and concluded that quiet meant okay. I didn't respond. She didn't notice. She was busy. Over the next several days, I heard through a mutual friend, not snooping, she volunteered it, that Maya had been venting. Mark always does this. He gets insecure and shuts down and makes it my problem. It's exhausting, honestly. She'd said something similar to a woman in their shared social circle. He's just really insecure. It's been a pattern. And she posted a group photo, nothing provocative. Tyler was in it, caption breezy and unbothered. She was building a version of events. Whether she was doing it deliberately or just filling in the gaps with what she already believed about herself, the version came out the same. Maya was the patient, independent woman. Mark was the controlling, jealous partner who couldn't handle her having male friends. She hadn't done anything wrong. She'd held her ground, he'd sulked, and now she was just living her life. She was so sure of that version that it didn't occur to her to check what I was actually doing. She'd gotten the outcome she always got, my silence, and moved on to the next scene of her own story. She'd already written herself as the reasonable one. She was just waiting for the situation to confirm it. She texted again 2 days later. Hey, are we okay? You've been quiet. I wrote back. Yeah, I'm good. That was true. I was better than I'd been in months. I just wasn't going to explain why. There's a certain kind of person who, when they think they've won an argument, stops paying attention to what the other person is doing. They got the outcome they wanted, silence. The conversation closed. Everything on their terms, so they move on. They're already in the next scene of their own story. They've written themselves as the reasonable one, and they're waiting for everyone else to catch up. I'd watched Maya do that the entire relationship. She'd say something dismissive, I'd go quiet, and she'd move forward. She moved forward. I did not. I wasn't angry while I was doing what I was doing. I just had a list, and I worked through it. She thought I was getting over it. I was getting out. I opened my email and ran a search. The TV receipt came up first. 55-inch, purchased about 2 years ago, the month after we moved in together. My credit card. My name on the confirmation. I'd picked it up on a Saturday while Maya was at brunch. I remembered the trip because I'd had to drive to 2 different stores to find the right wall mount. I'd spent an afternoon on it. I'd done the whole thing alone. The PlayStation was easier. Bought it the previous Christmas as a gift to myself, after the model I wanted came back in stock. Same card, same email account. The confirmation was right there. The espresso machine took a few extra seconds to find. Black Friday, 2 years back. I was the only one in the apartment who drank espresso. Maya drank drip coffee, always had. I bought it because I wanted one, and it was on sale. She'd started using it the following spring, which was fine, but it was mine. I'd bought it before she'd ever touched it. I saved all 3 confirmations as PDFs and put them in a folder on my phone. Then I pulled up the lease. Month to month. My name is primary tenant. Maya listed as occupant. I'd been the one who signed it, provided the employment verification, and set up the utilities in my name. The lease was mine. The financial infrastructure of that apartment ran through me. I'd always known that, but I'd never had a reason to sit with it the way I was sitting with it now. I spent about 30 minutes looking up the correct process for a formal vacate notice in our state. 30 days minimum, in writing, delivered to the other occupant. I drafted it using a standard template, made sure the language was right, and printed 2 copies at the library on my lunch break the next day. Then I went to the bank and requested a cashier's check for 1 month's rent. I want to be clear about why I did that. I wasn't trying to leave Maya stranded. I wasn't trying to punish her with a short timeline or make her situation harder than it had to be. The check covered her last month, so she'd have 30 full days and a paid month to figure out her next move. I didn't have to do it. I did it because it was the right thing, and because I didn't want there to be any question later about whether I'd left responsibly. I put everything in one folder on my phone. The 3 receipts, a photo of the lease, the vacate notice draft, and a photo of the cashier's check. Then I started moving things. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Over about 5 days, while Maya was out, I moved clothes, documents, my work bag, books, the personal items I wanted to keep track of. Boxes at my brother Dave's place. Nothing that would be immediately obvious. She texted me on day 3. "You cleaned up in here. It looks so nice." I said thanks. She said, "See, I knew you'd feel better." I didn't respond to that one. On the 5th day, I had the larger items scheduled for pickup. The TV, the PlayStation, the espresso machine. The following morning, I had one last thing to do. Maya was home when I handed her the notice. She was on the couch. I set the folded paper and the cashier's check on the coffee table in front of her and waited. She picked up the paper first. Read the first few lines and stopped. "What is this?" 30 days notice, I said. "And your last month, covered." She read it again, like she was looking for the part where it opened a conversation. "You're serious?" "Yeah, Mark." She set the paper down. "We need to talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about. The notice is legal. The check is for your last month. You have 30 days. She started to say something. I was already moving toward the TV. The guys I'd called were downstairs. She followed me. "You're taking the TV. It's mine. We need to." "Maya." I kept my voice level. "I gave you an answer last week. You told me my problem was my problem. You were right. I figured out what to do with it." She was still standing in the living room when I carried the TV out. The PlayStation on the 2nd trip. The espresso machine on the 3rd. As I came back from my last bag, I heard pieces of what she was saying. "You can't just, and what am I supposed to?" And then she stopped, because there wasn't much left to say to an empty hallway. The elevator came. She appeared in the doorway behind me. "Mark, we need to actually talk." I said nothing. The doors closed. I'm not going to pretend that felt good. It was strange and sad and final in a way I hadn't fully anticipated. 3 years is a long time. She had been real to me. I wasn't celebrating anything on that elevator ride down, but I didn't go back up either. 2 weeks later was Dave's birthday. Annual barbecue at his place, same group every year. I'd been going to Dave's birthday since before Maya and I ever met, and I wasn't going to stop because things had gotten complicated. I'd shown Dave everything the week before, sat down at his kitchen table and walked him through it. The 3 receipts, the lease, the notice, the cashier's check photo. He looked at the paperwork, looked at me, and said, "You handled this right." I told him I wasn't coming to the barbecue to make anything out of it. I was coming because it was his birthday. He said, "I know. I'll tell you now, though." She called me. He didn't need to say more. I could fill in the rest. I showed up, and the temperature in the room was slightly off. Not cold, just careful. People who'd always been easy with me were waiting to see how things were. A few of the people there were people Maya had talked to in the 2 weeks since I'd left. She had a head start on the story, and she'd used it. I could feel the version of me she'd given them, the controlling one, the jealous one, the one who'd walked out and taken everything. I got a beer and talked to Dave. He introduced me to a couple of people I didn't know. I stayed out of any corner that felt like a setup. Then someone said, Maya had just pulled up. I stayed where I was. She came in and worked the room for a while before she came over to me. She was fine, laughing, easy, not visibly upset. She'd done what she always did. Moved on, written her version, and decided the situation was settled on her own timeline. When she finally came over, she said, "Can we talk? There's nothing left to talk about." She took a slow breath. Okay, Mark. And then, in a voice that wasn't quite low enough, "You took our TV, you took our PlayStation. You just walked out and took everything we had together." A few heads turned. I said, "Hold on." I pulled out my phone. No speech. No setup. I just pulled up the folder and held the screen out so the people nearby could see if they wanted to. TV receipt. My credit card. My name. Dated about 2 years ago. PlayStation receipt. Same card. Same name. Espresso machine. Black Friday. My card. My name. Then the vacate notice dated, signed, proper format. Then the cashier's check photo. 1 month's rent, paid in full, handed to her the morning I left. Maya said, "Those were things we used together." I said, "Using something and owning something aren't the same thing." I put the phone down. Everything I took was mine. Everything in that apartment is still hers. I paid her last month so she'd have time to figure out her next move. Nobody said anything for a moment. Dave said, from about 6 feet away, "He showed me all of this last week." That mattered. Not because Dave was neutral, he's my brother, and nobody expected him to be neutral. It mattered because I hadn't assembled any of this in a parking lot 5 minutes before walking in. I'd had these receipts for 2 weeks. I'd shown them to someone before I had any reason to use them in front of a room. That's not a performance. That's just documentation. Then one of Dave's friends, someone I didn't know well, looked at Maya and asked, not cruelly, just genuinely, "So what's Tyler doing about the rent?" The room went quiet. Maya didn't have an answer for that. I looked at her once more. She was looking at the phone, then at me, working through the space between what she'd been saying and what was now in front of everyone. I said, "I hope it works out." And I turned back to Dave. That was the last thing I said to her. Not a speech. Not a final move. 4 words, and then I was done. I'm not going to claim it felt like a victory. It felt like the end of something that had been ending for a long time, and I was tired of pretending otherwise. She left before the food was out. I stayed to the end. Helped Dave with the candles. Maya reached out twice in the weeks after the barbecue. The first message was emotional. She hadn't thought I'd actually leave. She thought we were just in a rough patch. She didn't understand why I couldn't have just talked to her about it. I read it twice. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty, there just wasn't anything I could say that would have helped either of us. The conversation she wanted to have was one where she could reopen things, reframe things, get back to a place where her version of events was the one we were both living in. I wasn't going back to that. The second message was practical. A streaming subscription still linked to my name. I canceled it that afternoon. Clean. I heard through Dave that the version Maya had been circulating that I'd walked out without notice and taken things that belonged to both of us hadn't survived the barbecue. The people who'd been nodding along to it went quiet after. Not dramatically, just the way people go quiet when a story stops holding up. You don't make an announcement, you just stop repeating it. The "you took our things" claim had nowhere to go once his receipts were right there. The "he abandoned me" claim had nowhere to go once people knew about the 30-day notice and the paid month. Strip those 2 pillars out and there wasn't much story left. I also heard again through Dave, not from any effort on my part, that Maya had reached out to Tyler sometime in the week after I left. Asked whether he could help cover the shortfall in rent. He said he couldn't commit to anything like that right now. The following week, Tyler posted travel content. A beach somewhere. Looked like a decent trip. I didn't have any particular feeling about that. I'd never had a problem with Tyler as a person. My problem had been simpler. I was the primary financial anchor of a household where I consistently ranked 3rd in priority. Tyler not being able to cover rent wasn't something I was glad about. It was just what I'd already suspected, confirmed quietly, without anyone having to make a point of it. Maya found a roommate by the end of the 30 days. I don't know the details. That part of the story isn't mine anymore. I'm in a smaller place now. It's fine. It's mine. The TV is on the wall where I wanted it. The PlayStation is set up and I've been working through games I never had time for. The espresso machine is on the counter and I use it every morning. I'm not telling this story because I think I won something. I don't feel like I won. I feel like I stopped losing slowly. She told me my insecurity was my problem. She was right. I was insecure about a living situation where I paid for most of the apartment and came in third to someone who couldn't cover rent when it mattered. That was a real problem. An actual, solvable problem. So I solved it.